You've done a lot of walking recently. Your walk to Dakota. How'd your walk go with Ben Amarfio?
Yeah, it was good. Like I answered that on Saturday as well. But Ben's a really good mate of mine, and I've actually walked. We walk together regularly, and in particular in the last couple of months, I've reached out to him and mental health walks. Just to check in on him, and we've been on some long walks the last sort of couple of months, probably 4 or 5 walks over that time. And I did as soon as I got out of the jungle, because there's no reception over there, which was awesome. That was the other good thing. But so I came out and heard that David Noble had stood down or had been fired, and that was the culmination of a lot of pressure that had built up over a fair period of time. And then I started hearing about the criticisms that were coming back about, the club were weak for letting him go. He didn't really have a chance. So. I mean, it's a really tough position to be in. So I was checking in with Ben. He did ask me about, whether I was going to throw my hat in the ring or whether I was keen, and that was an easy no, because it's just not in my thinking at all. But I have been checking in on him, and it's a tough gig when you're not winning and when you're in a club that's going through and getting scrutinised so heavily, and there's still a lot of things that need to improve there, and there's a lot of things that need to come together, but it's not all doom and gloom as we saw on the weekend.
So the Bucks starts at North Melbourne, doesn't it? So Lee Adams was taking VFL training on Monday, Bucks. Less than a week later, he's coaching an AFL club to a win, and what he said was the highlight of his career. What an absolute roller coaster for him taking charge of the Kangaroos, who and a magnificent victory against the Tigers.
It was, and that's my first one, Sammy. So I basically want to say about North Melbourne that that emotion plays a massive role in performance. This isn't a David Noble versus Lee Adams story, and the players didn't pop up and perform for Lee Adams, which is what we would expect that would be. Now they showed some real go, some pressure. There was some energy, but that was there the week before against Collingwood as well. I reckon the real reason that players and playing groups perform so well when a decision like the David Noble decision is made is it just takes a weight off your shoulders. Understand how walking into the club every time with that pressure on your senior coach, with the scrutiny and expectation on your group, with you're failing, you're falling short, it takes a lot away from the top end of what you're able to contribute physically, emotionally, and mentally. It takes a lot of energy to handle that. So as soon as you take that load off the shoulders, all of a sudden you've got a free hit. So I don't think it's got anything to do with the coaching at all. It's got a lot to do with the emotional load that those players have carried, and they are a young group. So we can't underestimate the impact of the pressure that is brought to bear by poor performance or by questions about leadership. And as soon as that's removed, doesn't really matter who steps into it. The players themselves are freed up to have a crack, and we saw that against Richmond on the weekend.
In your dealings with Ben, were you asked to be on a committee to select the next coach?
No. As I said, the conversations about North were quite short and their future. This was there was two mates going for a walk and then just checking in on him.
So that being said, with what you said about North and the emotional release and the reflection on performance, do you have in your mind what sort of coach is suited to this group? Now, you don't probably know the group that well, but from your observations from the outside, is it the experienced person, someone like yourself, albeit you're out, we know that, but a Ross Lyon type, someone who's done it before, or is it a Craig McRae, Sam Mitchell, someone who hasn't done it? We're all asking that question, and I don't know if anyone knows the answer.
No, I think we only really know those answers in retrospect.
Yep.
Only the clubs internally know themselves well enough, and how well you know yourself will actually dictate, and this will only come out in the wash. It will actually dictate how good a decision you make on the type of character first, the skill set second, that you actually bring into your football club in those leadership roles. You look at a Clarkson, you look at a Lyon, some of the younger coaches that might be around, Uze, Kingsley.
Yeah.
These guys, and there's others that I haven't mentioned, obviously, but Vossi's second time around and doing great guns. Craig McRae hasn't senior coach before, but he's been a long time coach. He's been in it for his journey's been really established and clean. Sam Mitchell's been touted for quite a while and has done an apprenticeship and is coming through. Hawthorn haven't won a lot, but you've liked the way they've gone about it. Yeah. So I think North, without being specific, I think North need to work out exactly what, and this is part of Jeff Walsh's role with Ben, and we've obviously got McPherson and Rawlings that are in there in those director of footy roles. They need to work out who we are, what we're going to screw down, and then where are the gaps. What type of person? Is it a teaching coach or is it a motivational coach? Is it someone who's going to bring a big stick, or is it someone who wants to work with a carrot? The North have got a bit of working out to do, and they've got some time now to work out who they're going to go to.
Nathan Buckley on the role that emotion plays in performance.
Number 2, got to talk about this kid, Nick Daicos. I mean, he's amazing. I think what we've got to realise, take the rookie tag away. His talent and his skill is at the top echelon of the game. There's only a handful of players that can do the things that he's doing, especially in the last month. So he has gone and impacted the result of games, in tight games, in the 3 of the last 4 games. 100%. He's moved roles. The goal that he set up to his brother at Gold Coast, kicked a goal himself against North Melbourne, goes forward, and that was a 5-point game. To have 40 and kick 3, you have to say that you've significantly influenced the match. His capacity to find that extra half step, to make the right decision at the right time. Clearly, he's got an engine under there that keeps him going as well, because he looks like he's moving just as well in the last 10 minutes as he is in the first 10. So, and he's close to the top 20 disposals, for whatever disposals are worth, and his are worth plenty because he doesn't waste one. So let's take the rookie tag away, let's take the rising star question away, and let's just look at him as an individual, as a footballer and the AFL level. He's in the top echelon. So. And that's saying something already at his relative inexperience.
40 touches, 3 goals, 2 crucial goals in the last quarter, Kane, 749 metres gained.
So the question is, why doesn't he receive more attention? Because for young players, and I've played on a few young players as they're coming through, back in the day, a younger Chris Judd or players like that haven't experienced any attention. Yeah, because you fly under the radar. The next challenge for him is when that comes. Now, everything you have said is spot on. The next challenge, though, is to do it when someone is minding you. We've seen what John Longmire does with dangerous halfbacks like Bailey Dale and Sinclair, and they really had a crack at Jordan Clark on the weekend. Why hasn't that come yet?
Well, it will.
It's
no doubt it will, but there's 2 reasons. One is Pendlebury, Adams, Chris, side bottom, how more? Like, so there's guns. There's guns in Collingwood's best side with experience, with runs on the board that need to be looked after and considered. So he comes in as another one of a group of players who stand in their own right as match winners. So that's been there. And when they get that nucleus together, they're a very dangerous team, as has been shown over the last 4 or 5 years. The other thing is he's multi-positional, and that is he started as a halfback and it's really hard to tag a halfback. You can do it, but it would take a really specific focus to lock him away. And you'd probably think, he's a young kid, but right now you'd be looking at, well, we need to, if he's going to win games like that with his performances, we need to do something about it. But he can go in the midfield and then he can go to half forward as well.
Where does he end up?
Anywhere he likes. What the role that he's playing at the moment, and the way that he's being used by the coaching staff, and the signs that he's giving them, is that you can put me anywhere, anytime. I'm smart enough to be able to impact the game. If you want me to get touches forward of the ball, in the front half, and I can set goals up and I can kick goals. If you want me to go in, I'm only a small body, but I can win clearance and I can work my way out of contest and congestion. And if you want me to rack it up and set up the offense from the back, I'll do that as well.
Has the will to win at Collingwood, obviously on an 8-game winning streak, guys, but 7-0 in games decided by 11 or less. So they've won by 5, 7 and 5 and absolutely rolling the sleeves up, 126 tackles yesterday. Just before we get to a break, Bucks, Diesel here, given that you're supporting Ben Amarfio, how we spoke about off the top. Diesel wants to know, who was Bucks' walking mate when he was under the pump at Collingwood? Did you have a regular walking partner that you could soundboard off, if you like?
Well, Benny was one of them, and he looked out for me. I think that's what mates do. But I've probably understood the true value of friendship through to end of 2017, 18, 19, professionally and personally, in challenges that you face as an individual. And that's what, really that's what mates are there for. I mean, you're not just there to have a laugh, have a few beers and muck up, but you really should be there to support each other when you're struggling. So for me, I had probably 4 or 5 really sort of guys that are tight in my clique that I lent on heavily through those couple of years, which I found tough at times when the times were challenging. We've all got to have that.
Sydney and Fremantle, guys, one of the most talkable games for the weekend. The way Sydney won the game, the way they clearly adjusted, and potentially the template, what that means going forward against a Fremantle side, Bucks, who have been right at the pointy end when it comes to defending.
Yeah, well, I was a big rap on Sydney. So number 3 is like, have they found their mojo? In the last 3 weeks, they've beaten the Dogs, Freo and St Kilda. But then again, at the same time, they've lost to Port Adelaide and Essendon since the bye. So I think this team has the capacity to be. I reckon they're going at an 8-cylinder car going on 5 cylinders at the moment, and it makes sense because they're a younger side, so there's still going to be some ups and downs. But I think that their potential is scary good, and I wonder whether the penny has dropped for them in the last couple of weeks. They're in striking distance of the top 4, and we saw John Longmire sort of bristling at even having to project forward, and that is trying to bring his players and his team back at the step by step. But the ball's in their court. And I just, they're on the lower end of age and experience, even with Parker, Franklin, a few other players there. But I just wonder whether they found their mojo.
He's the king of the bristle, isn't he?
Oh, he doesn't like that sort of question.
He's the great bristler. Adelaide, GWS and North in their next 3 as well. So top 4, very realistic. What about Buddy? And the talk of his low ball offer. And what he wants, is that the potential to distract the group? And it's a really difficult decision for the club to be in for a 36-year-old who wants to still be paid big money, but you've got to fit everyone else in.
Well, I know that there's work that goes in behind the scenes, but I'm a bit oblivious to that. What I would suggest is that it'll be something that'll work out without any stress, and that I think potentially there's more to it externally than there actually is internally. There might be a bit of friction, a bit of gamesmanship and brinksmanship happening, but I dare say that'll happen. And what this shows is if Sydney had lost the last couple of games, that just goes up another notch again. But they haven't. They're actually playing good footy. So Sydney, have they found their mojo? That's a watch, because they could easily be a top 4 side. And if they get a double chance and they find their mojo, they're going to be a really dangerous team in September. The 4th one for me is Geelong. And I reckon, these guys now top of the ladder, and what they've done since Tom Stewart's going down has been even more impressive than before. The talk of their more aggressive use is, in my view, overrated. They're a defence-first team. Their forwards get higher than any other team. The number of times that you saw Carlton, who have been able to work the ball through really good team defences and score and access their tall forwards and score, the number of times if you freeze their vision when a Carlton player is looking up to go inside their forward 50, and Geelong have +3 or 4 everywhere in there, they work so hard. Guys like Blitzavs and Henry, Holmes, they're athletes. These guys are athletes. They cover the ground better than anyone. They recruit really well for being able to cover the ground, to be able to get all the way back to defend, and then to get all the way forward. Their offense is coming off the back of Cameron, who's having a career best year. Stengel, who's having a career best year and has come in. And obviously you've got Hawkins and a few others. They allowed 55 points to Carlton, 63 to Melbourne, 32 to North. They're the 3 games since Tom Stewart's gone out. Before that, Richmond 86 and West Coast 63. They've only allowed 59 points in the last 5 games. Mm-hmm. They're 3rd best defence in the competition at the moment, and by the end of the year, they'll be number 1. Mm-hmm. That's where they cut their teeth, and that's where they're going to be a hard team. But they've also added that offensive flair of having those gun players at the moment that are coming up, and they're nearly all Australian players in a forward line.
They're so bloody hard in there, aren't they? And Mark Blitzers, he put that tweet out, I reckon, when they took away the 3rd man up rule to say this will be the rule change that kills my career. Well, they've just found another couple of aces in his deck. He's in the ruck 1 minute. He's tagging Paddy Cripps the next. His wingspan's enormous. He gets a hand in there. He's a menace.
Yeah, I think he might have won a couple of best and fairest since that tweet.
Yes.
In a good side.
He was wrong, thankfully.
The dangerous tackle, Bucks. You've
so this is
you've
number
led
5.
the charge on this all year.
We've absolutely milked Buck Stops here. What are we up to? 35 minutes in. All right, so the 5th one, I had Luke Bruce.
Stop teasing it.
I had Luke Bruce initially, and I thought, like, what a great player over a long period of time. But when I saw, and I wanted to give him props, but when I saw the decision on Will Hayes and 2 weeks, I just thought I need to bump him and I need to put that in number 5. I cannot, for the life of me, understand what Will Hayes was expected to do in that situation. Now, this isn't. We can't ever take into consideration off-field stories or journeys along the way. But Will Hayes has worked bloody hard to come back in and play his first game at a second club. He's been on the fringe a lot. He's obviously a hard worker. He would be respected by his teammates. He's come in. He's laid a tackle early in his first game for his second club. His dad's flown over from Hong Kong to do this, to watch his son play. And he lays a tackle which happens to result in the concussion of the player that gets tackled in Sam Menegola, and he slept with 2 games. I mean, I don't know what he's expected to do.
Did he sling him into the ground?
No.
If we look at the vision, he tackles Menegola on the side, the right-hand side, and he continues with his momentum in a straight line through that. Menegola, or whoever is, this is where I can't understand it. The person who is tackled often will take evasive action to try and break that tackle, to try and beat that tackle. So Menegola's action was to try and spin to his left clockwise, which meant that the momentum was now going from his front to the back, and their feet got caught up, and Menegola goes over onto his back, and his head whiplashes into the ground. I don't know how culpable Will Hayes should be in that instance, other than not tackle at all. What can the kid do? I hope they challenge it. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, it's seen as the intent was careless. The impact was high because of the concussion, and the location was high, even though the tackle was on the body. Because the contact of the head on the ground, that makes it high contact in terms of location on the body.
I suppose they're asking, could he have tackled him without then throwing him to the ground?
He didn't. Think there wasn't 2 actions.
Yeah, no, he just took him to ground. He didn't throw him. So the term "throw to ground," I've watched it 15 times while Bucks has been speaking.
Yeah, same.
there is a thing in the game which is just a free kick against. So that's all it was. It was a holding the man free kick against because the ball was gone. So it was definitely a free kick. And if you had seen that incident and there was no concussion, you wouldn't think twice about it.
And that is the thing that tackle, you could lay that tackle 100 times and 98 times there's no concussions. So you get 2 weeks for a 2 out of 100 situation, and it's play on for or a free kick for 98 of the 100. I
got sympathy for Will Hayes, but unfortunately it's got nothing to do with it. His resume or where he's come from and all that sort of stuff, to state the bleeding obvious.
I understand that, but what do we expect? What do we expect a player in Will Hayes' position to do?
Keep the tackle close to him potentially. Would you use that phrase?
So we're not tackling anymore, we're just hugging.
Just drop the knees.
If a player missed
I'm playing devil's advocate here, by the way. Don't look at me like
I bring everything back to if a player missed a grand final. And maybe that's the wrong thing to do. If a player missed a grand final for that, can you imagine?
But that's a good way to put it. But I mean, in Will Hayes' case, this could end his career.
All of that.
You could have another young Carlton player who comes into that role next 2 weeks, takes his opportunity, and we never see Will Hayes again. Now, it's not about Will Hayes as such, but these are situations we need to consider. It's not. I mean, I understand the medico-legal challenges with concussion. I understand that the AFL are trying to protect the head in many ways, but we cannot legislate against incidental contact, which is going to happen when you have 36 players running around in a 160 by 140 metre oval, and you're chasing one pill. You're going to have contact. How can you legislate against all contact?
Paul's text in the Pies game, there was one paid to Noble, which was an exact replica of the one not paid to Ginnivan. So Bucks are all scratching our heads. Does his reputation precede him? I guess the question I've got for you is, when you're going on podcasts and you're talking about how you quote unquote cheat the code, umpires are human. Are they looking at this particular player, Jack Ginnivan, in a different light than what they are to, say, his own captain, Scott Pendlebury, who got a high tackle at the weekend?
Well, there was one that Pendles didn't get as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to understand, there was 126 tackles to Collingwood and 110 odd to Adelaide, and that was as a high, intense pressure game as you're ever going to see. Like uncontested marks were, I think they were both down around sort of mid 40s, which was really low. So the game was in contest a lot, and I think it was really well umpired. There were some free kicks missed, and then but not all of them we're going to speculate or focus on. But we do with Jack because it's become
definitely been a shift though, Bucks.
Oh, no doubt. It seems
for 17 weeks or 16 weeks
for him only.
Yeah,
him only.
Well, at this point, yes, but I think it's not just. There's no doubt that at different times players will. It's not whether you call it a cheat code or whether they
milk it.
They milk, or they find a thread that gives them an advantage that others, haven't yet got onto. So, in many ways, I mean, he wasn't the first to have the capacity to challenge the tackler in a way, especially in the forward 50, which end up, if you give a free kick away when it's a shot on goal. So Joel Selwood was speculated on this for a long time, but I don't know reckon that he copped the scrutiny that Jack is. And we saw Keziah Pickett with the same thing. We're seeing it as a consistent thread. Like Luke Bruce is a ball player, fair player, and we were talking about him, but he's had that. He's had that capacity. Every small forward, generally, the big fellas don't do it because they don't find themselves down there as much and not as agile. And there's more of them to tackle from the shoulder to the knee. There's less of a small player to tackle. And you think about a Liberatore, either Tom or
Luke Shuey's done it pretty well for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And so it has always been there, but we have personified it this year. It has been personified this year, and it has become a greater focus because of it. And I've got no doubt that the umpires have that in the back of their mind when they get to those contests.
Yeah.
But the rules are the rules.
Well, the
Still
rules
gotta
are
apply them.
The rules are written as such. When the tackle is reasonably applied and the ball carrier is responsible for the high contact via a shrug, drop, arm lift, or duck, play on should be called. Now, we know he's good at both of those, the drop and the arm lift. A drop at the knees or body to gain head-eye contact, play on. Tackle around shoulder area and the arm pushes the tackle up, that's play on as well. But it's not being applied consistently.
Well, it hasn't been for 17 weeks, and now it is. But only to one player.
Only to one player.
So the actual call might be correct, that it's play on. When you read it out like that, it sounds like they're making the right call on him, but not others. So Cozzy Pickett one is the perfect example. He lifts his arm before even before Jonas hits him.
He's waiting for it.
He's looking for the arm to lift it above his head. Now, the safety of that I don't think is great either. It's not a good look for the game. That should have been called play on, judging by the way you've just read the rule out.
If the arm raise contributes to the high contact. So I would suggest that there have been more free kicks paid than should have been in these specific situations, for any and every player, and that if we're talking about it, take an individual out of it, take that action into account. If we're talking about it, and we see it across the competition more and more regularly, I think that the umpires will definitely be talking about it, and it'll be interesting to see how it is adjudicated, because any of those evasive actions that actually encourage and contribute to that high contact, well then, I think we're still going to have some that are paid that shouldn't be. We're still going to have some that aren't paid that should be. That's just the way it is. We don't expect the umpires to be perfect, but the general thread of it will be interesting to watch.
How do you see a side, before we get to the break, like Richmond at the moment, who seemingly in the last quarter, they've given up, in 6 of their losses, they've given up some pretty big leads in those last quarters, have seemingly almost forgotten how to win at the death. 11-22 at the weekend. Richmond killing Richmond was how Damien Hardwick put it. Their AFL, they were going into the round, AFL number 1 for inside 50s. And they invent new ways to bugger it up at the death. 1 goal 9 from inside 30 yesterday.
Well, I think when you lose a couple of close games, that's when don't worry, a coach can sit down and find 30 little things that we could have done better in the last 5 minutes. So then extrapolate that across the whole of a game. You think, well, okay, if we'd have just kicked straight and been 22-11, we wouldn't have a problem. But there's a whole heap of things that go into the result of a game of football. And if you're Damien Hardwick, you really are tearing your hair out because you realise how much of on a knife's edge this competition is. And you've lost 2 games by less than a goal. Dylan Grimes was the one on Zerha, and to be not goal side that far away from the clearance and that far away from goal was interesting enough.
And 6 snags for Zerha as well.
Well, whether he expected a handover, but if you pause that and go frame by frame, you think, okay, well, as a coach, you go, oh, no. And you're one of our most experienced defenders. The captain with a gun in the competition too, from a defensive perspective. So whether there was something structurally that fell down there, or whether it was just a brain fade, but you don't want to give those up, and that would be Richmond killing Richmond, because there's nothing more Richmond than Dylan Grimes.
The ability to adjust in game, we touched on it earlier, just with Sydney. So they have 127 uncontested marks in the game, but 88 of those coming in the second half. And Justin Longmuir said, we were slow to adjust. I don't think any team has been able to do that to us this year. We know, I think Fremantle have been ranked in the top 2 defensively across the competition for almost the entirety of the year. So what sort of template, if you're sitting at another club, you're reviewing the round this morning and you think, look at how Sydney brought Fremantle unstuck. It's a copycat industry. How much do we look into that?
Well, they're top 2 in terms of aggregate. So Melbourne are number 1, just over 1,100 points. Then Freo are 1,155, and then Geelong are 1158. So that's how tight it is in terms of points against. But Fremantle's defensive profile has changed significantly. When we looked at them about 6 or 7 rounds in, scores from turnover, best in the comp. Against best in the comp, hard to move the ball against them. In the last 8 weeks, it's flipped. They're bottom 4 for scores against from turnover. If sides are being able to kick mark through them or around them or control the ball, that's not the Freo way. So there's something that's gone amiss with the way that they're defending. And it's not just Sydney; it's been across the last couple of months of footy. So Fremantle got some work to do to get back to their aggressive defensive best, to be able to prevent the opposition from being able to move the ball. And part of that is to take away chains of uncontested marks to force sides into contest quicker.